Right now, we're going to take a look at basic Unsharp masking. Now, what I mean by basic is I'm going to show you how to do the Unsharp masking, how to use the tool, and a little bit later we'll get into some extensions of this tool, which will give us a lot more flexibility and, in many cases, a lot better sharpening. So let's go ahead and get started. You can see we're here in the bridge, and we're going to go ahead and use this flower again. So let's open that. Let's just double click it while holding down the Option key so we can get rid of the bridge back there. The next thing I'm going to do before I sharpen is I'm going to bring this up to 100%. You can see right down here in the lower left-hand corner that I'm at 66%. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just bring that up to 100%. And the easiest way to do it, as I've said before, is just to double-click the Zoom tool. So now we're up at 100%. Let's just expand the image out a little bit more. Bring it over into the middle. Okay. As I said before, what we want to do is always do our sharpening on another layer so that we don't destroy the original image and so that we can get back to it. So the way we do that is hit our Command or Control J to duplicate the layer. And let's just rename this layer Sharpen. Even though I'm using Unsharp Mask, I'm calling it Sharpen. Okay, let's go up to the Filter menu and pick the Unsharp Mask. And now we can see we get a separate dialog box. And we have some sharpening that's already taking place in there. Let's take a look first at the sliders. The first slider gives us the amount. This tells us how much sharpening there's going to be. And I can just take this and bring this over, and you can see that as I bring it over, the image gets sharper. Now, let me tell you a couple of things about this, about the window. First of all, the preview says whether or not we see the changes of the sharpening within the image itself. So you can see that I can turn that off and on. Now, another quick way I can see the before and after is once I get inside the preview window here, you can see that my tool changes to a hand tool. And what I can do there is click on the mouse and I see the unsharpened version or the non-sharpened version, and then it goes ahead and recalculates the sharpening, and I can move this image around. Now also you notice that when I go out into the image itself, I can actually pick the part of the area that I want to see inside my window here. So I can move that around and look at it in various places. Okay, so let's just put it right here in the center for right now. And again, I can use the scrub tool here to show almost no sharpening, and I can bring it out to the maximum amount of sharpening, which on this dialog box I think is around 500. There we go. And you can see that that doesn't look very good. Okay, let's bring this back down to about 100 right now, and it doesn't make too much difference from what we're going to be looking at right now. And you can see here that the next tool I'm going to look at is the radius. And what this tells me is how far out the sharpening will, how far out the sharpening effect will be seen. So the minimum that you can get here is 0.1 pixels, and you can see I can take this tool and take it all the way out to 500 if I want, and it just doesn't show very much. As I increase the radius, you can see that the image does get sharper, and it gets to a point where it starts really looking bad. Because remember, what the sharpening is, it doesn't actually make the pixels sharper, it increases the contrast at the various border areas. And you can see that it gives me an effect that I just don't like. It looks awful. So typically you want to keep the radius down fairly small, maybe around 1 to 2. An old rule of thumb is you take the resolution of the picture and divide that by 200, and that gives you the radius. So if you have a 300 pixel per inch image, then your radius should be about 1.5. But again, this is something that you want to eyeball. and you use the radius and the amount together to give you the amount of sharpness that you want to use. Now there's a third slider down here called threshold. And what this does is this says where the sharpness is going to be added as far as how different are the adjacent pixels. In other words, if the threshold is high, then there's not a lot of sharpening. If the threshold is low, then you do get more sharpening because it's looking for adjacent pixels that are more different. So what I normally do is keep my threshold down around 0. I'll put my radius started out at about 1.3, and then I'll just go in and start using the slider, the amount slider, to give me the amount of sharpening that I want to see. And again, here you can see that I am getting some edge effects around the petals of the flower, but I'm also bringing up some detail and some sharpness within the center of the flower. So I have to go with the amount of sharpness that looks best for me. Now, like I said, this is just the basic way that the Unsharp Mask tool is used. You can use it like this to get the sharpness that you want, or you can go ahead and look at some of the more advanced methods where we fine-tune this image and come up with sharpening that we have a lot more creative flexibility to accomplish.